wasting much more time, I would like to hand over this session to Habibi sir, as well as our Chandana madam. Just she will be introducing herself and she will be speaking few words, encouraging us for all of us. And after that, the sessions chair will be the technical session will be continued by Professor Gordon Hayes, and then Kishore K. Chakraborty, then J.M. Friedzman, then J.S. Aquilar sir, and Shomo Shur and other online presenters from India only. So thank you so much, and wish you all the very best for this day session. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. Wait. I'm seeing. I'm coming.
Chandana madam, can you hear me?
হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে
চন্দনা ম্যাডাম শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
হ্যাঁ আমরা তো আছি এখানে
ওকে, সো
Namaskar.
চন্দনা ম্যাডাম
Yes,
একটু
sir. Good to see
আমাদের
you.
সবার
hello
উদ্দেশ্যে
hello hello Fritzman it's late here now
Yes, sorry for late start, sir. Actually, due to some technical glitches, we couldn't start in due time. But sorry for this once again.
okay well all right we have
So
to
now
do
it is okay. We can move. Due to some technical glitches, we had to wait for a while.
yeah
Okay, please, Chandana ma'am, speak few words for our audience, and after that, sir will be continuing.
okay কোথায় গেলে
You're all dark there. We don't see you too well.
okay yeah I'm here
Well, yes.
waiting to
No, I
hear
mean,
from
in Siliguri, you can't see them. I can't see them when
oh
it's a
oh
dark screen.
okay
Mere
oh
shadows.
this has been
But you can hear me, so I suspect they can too.
yes
And JM
and
can too.
what is your time now are you in your residency not in South Carolina
It's 12:01.
yeah yeah and for me it is past 11
Yeah.
and but somehow I have this bad habit of kind of not being able to do a good job
No, don't
when it is
worry.
getting this late.
I know. It takes it's a challenge. I agree.
It's going to be a big challenge for me, I know. Yeah, unfortunately I don't have a ready paper. Usually I just try to say something.
Yeah.
That's my usual approach. And but but then it's one thing if I'm giving a speech at 6 in the evening or
That's right.
11 in the morning, but this is past 11 at night.
That's right.
I have no idea how long I can up and do this.
Try not to overdo it.
Yeah. Well,
No,
it's also
ছেড়ে দিন আপনি আচ্ছা এটা লাগছে না না তো স্কুলে তো যাচ্ছে না তো আমি ওটা সাজেশন দিচ্ছি এখন এই সেটিং করতে গেলে অনেক সময় লাগবে
Hello, Keysore. Can you hear me?
hello.
Don,
Yeah, I
can
can
you
hear
hear
you fine.
Oh, yeah, we hear you loud and clear. So,
That's
so I would say, by all means, let's start because I think we're behind the schedule. So,
All right. Yeah, we are ready.
So is Chandan the first speaker or are you the first speaker?
Okay, I
Or is
can,
Gordon?
I can try to get her, but she left. I think she is not in the program. She's probably
Oh, okay. Oh, and she's at the top of the program.
she's not here.
So right below her name is Gordon.
She's not here. I mean, she has left. She is not in the program. She doesn't want to say anything. She was here for 45 minutes or an hour
So
waiting.
should Gordon?
Yes.
না ওনার কথা
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Gordon
Well,
Heist. Yeah.
either Gordon or
Say that again.
start.
Can you hear me?
whichever you-
I can hear you fine.
Good. Should I start?
এইচডিএমআই
Gordon,
কানেকশন করছেন না সাথে সাথে ও এইচডিএমআই
we hear you loud. Yes, we start. And
Okay.
I think we basically have like 15 or 16 minutes per person.
So do you want me to begin?
Okay, so go ahead. This is Professor.
Thank you.
Yes, please begin. Gordon.
Thank you. The title of my paper is Self, Substance, and Subjectivity. I'll try to work through it as fast as I can. The theme of this conference addresses political issues that are unfortunately reminiscent of the fall of empires and dark ages of previous ages. We are now a quarter of the way through the 21st century, and the worldwide horizon is again clouded with war and threats of war, political instability, mass migrations, gross human rights violations, and failures of the rule of law. These are not the worst of times, but they could well be a harbinger of them. On constant display are the near manic behaviors of some, ranging from authoritarian leaders wreaking havoc with democracies, nation states, and alliances, to gun-happy, other-hating citizens harming innocent victims, all of which creates the inconsolable grief of many. Less on display are the ways we are watched from without by data collectors, marketers, solicitors, dividers, and unifiers, turning us into commodities and ignoring the extreme poverty for which our collective capital could be better used to lessen suffering and improve lives. People and their actions become commodities themselves, rhetorical targets for ideologies and appeals through social media, resulting in a militant passivity concerning things gone wrong, such as our deteriorating environment. Passivity, in fact, has a greater legacy in the democracy of the United States, having elected its reactionary president and legislature in 2024. It is time to be practical, for reason to become practical, as G.W.F. Hegel said, as he displaced the abstract noumenal idealism of Immanuel Kant. Like the long tradition of materialism and skepticism from Charvaka to Jayarsi in the East, to Hume and some say to Wittgenstein in the West, of which he, like Udayana, was certainly not a member, Hegel questioned the privileged position of memory and sense perception in shaping our thoughts, as Udayana had done in the 11th century. If reason is to be practical, Hegel argued, it must not only rely on judgments drawn from sensation alone, nor confine truth to the past of meaning and memory. It must move beyond the ego to the concrete world. This is about as far as we shall go with Hegel, but it is through this phenomenological approach to reason that one gains insight into the dilemma of empiricism. Empiricism forfeits certainty for probability, essential for positive science. But as we adjust to thinking of the world in probabilities, positivism's mute facts goads reason to labor instead in the light of the possible. My topic, self-substance and subjectivity, pivots on this dilemma. It concerns the nature of the self, a nature which has both an empirical and a transcendental dimension. These dimensions are detectable through these concepts. The complex and intricate whole they produce is particularly relevant to address in our time. Our conflicts, fueled by unhinged hatred of the other, often more pronounced than by any real conviction, culminate in a rhetoric of intimidation, breeding fear and uncertainty, both in our restive communities and beyond in our nuclear age. Stereotypes abound on the political front and on personal grounds, reinforcing prejudices against others, whomever the others might be, and loss of respect for the integrity of individuals. Research into the stressed out self falls largely to the disciplines of psychology and sociology, but the philosophy of the self should also not be ignored. Its goal is not to adjust individual behaviors, nor to interpret group behaviors, but to understand the structure of the self. One can neither adjust nor interpret the self without understanding its structure, a structure that only becomes visible through the interplay of these three terms, self, substance, and subjectivity, which I will now briefly discuss. Grammatically, self is a noun, which conveys reciprocal reference through relative pronouns like myself and yourself. What has happened? Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, well, then I'll continue after all that echoing. Grammatically, I said self is a noun which conveys reciprocal reference through relative pronouns like myself and yourself. Linguistic reciprocity involves the shell of identity, just as remembrances of the past afford individuals their personal history. Reciprocity between what I call myself and who I am is not frozen or fixed, but materializes as a complex and heterogeneous What's that feedback?
Too much echo.
Can you control it? Can you control it? Jim Fritzman suggests everyone but me mute your phones. Okay. All right, let's try it again. Linguistic reciprocity provides a shell of identity, just as remembrances of the past afford individuals their personal history. Reciprocity between what I call myself and who I am is not frozen or fixed, but materializes as a complex and heterogeneous or organic whole. Its identity is always a product of its achievements, which is why history is never a linear unfolding, but a dynamic and memorable transition through events and situations that make it up. But if the self is a process or is process-oriented in this way, is it a substance? At least since Aristotle, the concept of substance has been in use as a primary designator of what something is. This usage does not require primary designation to involve permanence or immutability or any more than locus. Instead, it requires a reduction in the sense of ascertaining what must be, such that what is has become what it is. To his credit, Udayana used locus as what must be for the self to become. The primacy of faith in the Christian Middle Ages fostered the idea that the self-substance is permanent, not a reduction, but a given by God, an unquestioned foundation. That idea is anchored in Descartes, who designates two substances, mind and body, and ascribes the self to the mind because, unlike bodily states, it cannot be doubted. The I cannot be doubted. Restoring the body from doubt, however, for Descartes, requires reliance on God's goodness. Descartes was satisfied that the ego could not be doubted, but Hume did succeed in doubting. He argued forcefully that the only certainty we can have must arrive through perception, and substance, including the substantialist self, is not perceivable. It remained for logical positivism in the 20th century to discard the substantialist view of the self as an unverifiable metaphysical concept, which positivism cheerfully did. Suffice it to say, however, that from Hume to positivism, substance meant something thingly hidden beneath its impressions. Such a description commits the straw man fallacy, treating as it does an attribute, permanence, as a sterile and undesirable, not something capable of development, as had been true with Aristotle and Descartes. Other philosophers who maintain the self is a substance would find this empirical rejection one-sided. Udayana, for example, holds that the self is a substance, but he refutes the anti-substantialist perspective of Buddhism somewhat on its own grounds by identifying belief-behavior conflict between belief in the momentariness of the self and all reality, and behavior that adapts to the present through recognition of its past. Assuming the self is more than a linguistic category, a substantialist interpretation can provide insight into how to seek it as a where that becomes a what in a place discernible through its variables. The dimension that provides it with a character is subjectivity. Subjectivity suffers an overly precise definition as the opposite of objectivity, and often has become thought of as irrational, opposed to the objectively real. A truer understanding of subjectivity, however, must plumb its depth. In metaphor, it will need to include a heightened appreciation of the transversal orchestration of thoughts, desires, and volitions that intercalate the continual changes in tempo, pitch, crescendos, and decrescendos that temporize it. The Argentinian philosopher Ricieri Frondizi held that the self must not be thought of as a set of compartments any more than it should be thought of as a simple substance. One should forbear the thought that the self of the self as the sum of its experiences or made up of parts. According to him, it is instead a complex structure and each of its dimensions are dynamic substructures. Not to be confused with structuralism, this shift in terminology renders much more apparent the functionality of a structure as it undergoes developmental change. Perhaps a reference from Emmanuel Levinas can accentuate this structural function. Speaking of the subject undergoing persecution, Levinas writes that, quote, "the face of the neighbor in its persecuting hatred can by this very malice obsess as something pitiful. To undergo from the other is an absolute, to undergo from the other is to undergo from the other is an absolute patience only if this from the other is already for the other. This transfer," he continues to say, "other than interested, otherwise than essence, is subjectivity itself. What colloquially would be thought of as giving in to one's antagonist is here treated by Levinas, a Holocaust survivor who knows well the imperturbability of cold, unhinged hatred, as a resource in refusing to totalize the reality of the other. Instead, he heeds the other through the infinite subjectivity he shares with the other beyond being, as he says. Similar to Frondizi, Levinas does not treat the subject as a symptom. In persecution, probably in the hostility of prejudice as well, it plumbs the depths of passivity. It can move from suffering to expiation, as the congregation of the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina did in forgiving a 21-year-old white supremacist who massacred 9 of them in a church service in 2015. Recognizing subjectivity as the other in the same is central to Levinas's ethical metaphysics, not to Frondizi's Gestalt view of the self. But this example of a subjective response to persecution illustrates a transversal response to trauma in time. Thus far, I have introduced these 3 concepts which are necessary for revealing the nature of the self. The one feature of the self which philosophy following Hegel largely ignored until Frondizi is the importance of affect in giving the self its nature. Affectivity has now become so pronounced in our collective discourse involving our politics and media trafficking that it almost appears as a missing element that has prevented us from understanding the nature of our own selves. Once again, we can ask, is the self a thing, a res cogitans, or a res extensa, or what otherwise is known in philosophical parlance as a substance? If it is, it clearly is not a typical thing, for the simple reason that it can't be seen nor heard through its attributes. But just as light has hues and sound has overtones, thought, feeling, and action have their source in the self's intentional structure. Unlike light and sound, however, standard practice is to regard the self as an unseen but inferred something. And if it is not so inferred, what referential capacity makes possible are frequently insightful, even though sometimes misguided, discourse about selves and selfhood. The answer to that question, in a word, is affect. Hume held that I can never catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. But he should have also said that he never could catch himself without a feeling that informed that perception. The personal identity that one would infer from perception, if one could, would, after all, not be a personal identity without also being an affective presence. Affectivity, in fact, would appear to be more important than substance itself. Early Buddhism held that all reality, including the self, is a fiction. Consciousness alone is real, and that feelings must be disciplined to maintain a balanced perspective. One supposes that could also be a reason Hinduism abjured affectivity, thinking of it as too mortal bound for the nature of the self, which it viewed as an eternal substance distinct from mind and body. In the words of Udayana, again, the self is ubiquitous, and the not-self includes the mind-body complex. Clearly, the martial arts of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita implies this by depicting Arjuna as slaying an army of former friends and relatives to execute his transcendental duty. Among those who denied knowledge of the self, as he was dying, Hume described himself in his self-written funeral oration as a person of mild dispositions with no concession given to his self-survival as a substance, only a survival as a memory, apparently. Charvaka, in the 6th century BCE, was a materialist who held that perception was our only source of knowledge, and that there is no proof through perception of a self distinct from its body. The purpose of life is to enjoy its sensual pleasures, he said, giving a strong hedonistic tint to affectivity. J.R.R.C. in the 8th century, radical, or J.R.R.C. in the 8th century, an 8th century radical skeptic, apparently aligned with Charvakan materialism, stated in his Tattva Paplava Minsimha, which translates into the lion in the dissolution of all categories, a title that itself is affective as well as epistemological. He stated in it that one should follow the mundane or ordinary path. With reference to the mundane behavior or interaction, both a child and a wise man are alike. Unpacking this many-faceted jewel is tricky, but it suggests that gaining wisdom does not create one's happiness, for universals do not exist for J.R.R.C., and the mundane life is the way of pleasure. In sum, the question of the self, of what it involves and to what it refers, needs to be rehabilitated. The role of the self does enjoy an anthropomorphic privilege because based on the uniqueness of human reason and language. Aristotle captured this best when he declared that humans are dwellers in city-states who must use reason to realize the end specific to their animal natures, human flourishing. Reason requires language, its power of shared symbols, and its logic of established patterns of thought to realize such an end. If reason aids our flourishing, however, it must do so with a consensus among selves not often written and often not admired, given the rival interests that naturally make up a polity. A consensus of this sort speaks not of a common constitution or generic sameness like substance denotes, but of a qualitative dimension, a shared sense of value. Central to these values, because they involve living with others, is ethical value. Flourishing with others of all sorts requires a positive value taken in attunement or harmony, and that involves sensibilities untapped by reason's logic. Attunement may be a feeling,
Sorry, but
it
there
is
is too much
structured by
echo,
values of
hard to
fairness.
follow. There is too much echo, it's hard to follow now.
Okay.
Too much echo.
Still?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really enjoying the presentation, but it's now getting harder and harder to follow because of the echo.
Yeah, okay. Okay. It seems quiet right now. Shall I try to
It's better
continue?
now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Attunement may be a feeling, but it is structured by values of fairness, temperance, and even fortitude. Developing and maintaining these and related qualities creates a basis for reason to generate principles and become practical. It often becomes so guided by a dominant theory, as with St. Thomas, natural law combined with virtue theory, or on its own, as Kant famously argued in defense of his categorical imperative. Ethics is arguably a high-minded form of practical reasoning, emphasizing regard for others as distinct from self-interested reasonings that would involve cunning or manipulating others. Aware that high-mindedness can be remote, Aristotle did recognize cleverness as an important affiliation with practical reasoning, but he labeled it as good only if its ends were noble, and degraded it as knavery if its ends were base. Given the need to reference qualities when addressing the question of the self, reason is soon brought into conflict with the wellspring of values, the will. Even reason must be reasonable in the interests of the self's autonomy. So to address the nature of the self, I have argued that no fewer than three terms must be galvanized and demand a reasoned accounting. Substance, the eponym for identity, subject, not the foundation, but the agency for valuing, and including the value of autonomy, and self, as a synthetic unity capable of exhibiting the sense of the human. In combination, they create the justification for privileging the human with deference in the animal kingdom. That necessarily includes the ethical criteria for developing principled behavior, both among humans who flourish and all the non-humans which surround them and in many cases sustain them. Ethical criteria are integral to reconstructing the question of the self. Whatever else we might say about it, the self is bound to the world, both social and natural, through what Hegel called the power of negation. Not being the other, it relates to others across differences. Ethical guidance. Now, the French axiologist Raymond Poulain insisted that values, including ethical values, are not a set of givens, as though, like facts, they could be justified without being affirmed. Values, he argued, are confused with their signification. Their signification leads us to think of them as unchangingly real, but values are continually changing. Although we speak commonly of the value of justice, what justice meant in the 4th century BCE Athens and what it means now are fundamentally different. The point, Poulin's point, is that we look to values for meaning and fail to realize that they do not have meaning. Their significations change from age to age, sometimes even from event to event. For example, in recent history, 9/11 symbolizes the disvalue of excess, and before that, Sputnik triggered the values of cosmic awareness. Values themselves are the component of our intentional structure oriented towards action, something Poulain called our axiological consciousness. And because of that, ethics, the study of the good and right in theory and practice is a building block of civilization. Poulain, in fact, called it a philosophy of the human. This is a quote from him: "Creating values is the function of the human. It is the way one affirms values and acts on them. That is the condition of a properly human existence, not its end, but the condition of it." End quote. Following 9/11, Ted Hundrich affirmed something that actually extended this philosophy, which he called the principle of humanity or fellow feeling. An ethical principle, he sought to use it to prevent bad lives, as he said, focusing mainly on distress and suffering instead of relations among people. It was inspired by this comment from Colonel Rainborough in the 17th century English Civil War. Quote, "Really, I think that the poorest he, that is in England, has a life to live as the greatest he." The ethic of our times, the ethic for our times, I submit, is an ethic based on this pair of principles proposed by Palan and Onderich. They synchronize reason and will, contextualize it, and prepare ethics to address human needs. And with that, I'll end because I think I've overstretched you. With apologies if I have.
Yeah.
Any questions? Or are we going on to the next?
I have a question if
Yes,
it is,
Peter.
if I'm allowed to present the question. Would you kindly, I mean, this was a very, very enjoyable, clear, profound presentation. But if you are willing to get into the topic of substantiality of the self and evidence from perception that could be offered for that viewpoint, would something like recognitive perception be relevant for that? If you could kindly comment on that. Let me explain what is meant by recognitive perception.
Yeah.
This is not just a straightforward perception of a rose or a building. It is also recognizing that someone, the same person, has seen it before and is also now seeing it again. So that is what is meant by, as distinguished from ordinary perception, recognitive perception. So someone like Hume is demanding evidence from perception. He can do that as long as he maintains his empiricistic standpoint. So the question I have for you is, will this be an acceptable evidence to someone like Hume, or should he also dismiss this kind of experience, recognitive perception, as necessarily false? If so, what would be his reason for doing so? Does he have any reason that has not simply, from his point of view, some appeal, but also point of view from the points of view of other philosophers who are also debating the issue with him? Can he point to some common base from which he can dispute or reject recognitive perception? That is my question.
It's an excellent question, and it's also it's an Achilles heel for Hume. That is exactly not only for Hume, but also for Buddhism in Udayana's treatment of Buddhism, because it is certainly clear that recognitive perception is a way in which perception allows for a past and a present to be connected. Now, the past and the present can be connected without necessarily arguing that the self is substantial, but it's a very difficult argument to make, simply because you don't have any structure there if you don't have a continuity. So you're right. I think that it is probably the case that there's no good reason for dismissing the substantialist view, but there is a need to rethink what substance means, more in terms of the way Aristotle treated it. It's an excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that answered it.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. So
Well, next in 15 minutes, we're still Dr. Chakrabarti, please present. Thank you. Go ahead, Kishore.
Okay.
If you could start your presentation.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to present my thoughts on a very important subject. And the topic of my presentation is the Nyaya ethical theory. Different aspects of Nyaya philosophy have been studied by modern scholars for quite some time. But when it comes to the Nyaya ethical theory, we do not have much research coming from modern scholarship on that subject. We do have modern scholars having done very substantial contribution to the study of Nyaya logical theory, their theory of inference, and some of the ontological topics such as the theory of the self, the substantiality of the self, and so on. But the Nyaya school of Hindu philosophy has also devoted a great deal of attention to ethical issues. On that particular area of the Nyaya school of Hindu philosophy, this is one of the 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, and it's a very old school, as we all know. The founding work called the Nyaya Sutra of Gautama, according to most scholars, the date of the Nyaya Sutra is 6th century BCE. The date has been estimated differently by some other scholars, but I'm saying the majority of scholars, the majority of Indologists and specialists of classical Indian philosophy favor, for a variety of reasons. And because the time is short, I will skip, explaining that kind of evidence. But it is a very old work, and also a work that is almost unmatched in terms of logical rigor and precision and originality. So in that work, the ethical issues have been taken up in a comprehensive way that has not been studied by modern scholars, mostly ignored, very, very little of that. In fact, what we have from modern scholars is some kind of disinformation or misinformation when it comes to ethical theories in classical Indian philosophy. So if we look at, very leading Indologists, specialists of classical Indian philosophy, such as Arthur Beriddle Keith, A.B. Keith, G.R. Ballantyne, most of them have taken the position that while there is a legitimate case to make that an indigenous logical tradition, which may be called Indian logic, was there and should be given credit for that, and also that there is an indigenous tradition that can be labeled as Indian ontology, which are all different from classical Western philosophies and probably originated independently. However, when it comes to ethics, in the opinion of A.B. Keith, G.R. Ballantyne, and these are leading scholars of classical Indian philosophies, there is no Indian ethics in the opinion of these scholars. And they have also said that this is a lacuna in classical Indian philosophy, a serious gap that shows the lack of development of classical Indian philosophy in a very major area of philosophy. So I would like to respond to that assessment of leading specialists of classical Indian philosophies who are of the opinion that there is no Indian ethics, no indigenous, though there is indigenous Indian logic, Indian ontology, Indian metaphysics, but nothing worth the name, nothing comparable to the kind of work that Plato did. Of course, Plato did a magnificent work on ontology and other areas, and so did Aristotle. But they also contributed very, very powerfully to ethics, but nothing comparable to that, not even close, ever happened in classical Indian philosophy. This is the opinion of Ballantyne, G.R. Ballantyne, A.B. Keith, and many others who are all leading specialists of classical Indian scholars of classical Indian philosophies. In my opinion, this is very serious misinformation, very serious. And I'll try to show, I know the time is very limited, so I'm going to be limited to the Nyaya ethical theory. So, I'd like to emphasize that there are many other ethical theories that have been developed in classical Indian philosophy, and they have, of course, challenged the Nyaya ethical theory. And so there is as much debate among different ethical theories developed in classical Indian philosophies as there is in classical Western moral philosophies. So, but I just don't have the time to get into all of that. I will limit myself, given the very limited time I have, to the Nyaya ethical theory, but still hope to show that the claim that that there is no Indian ethics is just, and that this is a lacuna, a very serious gap, is not justified. So the founding work of the Nyaya school is the Nyaya Sutra. And the earliest available commentary on the Nyaya Sutra is called the Nyaya Bhashya, authored by Vatsyayana. And I begin there with the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya, laying the groundwork for the Nyaya ethical theory. And then if there is time to move on to a Navya Nyaya philosopher called Gangesha and his work, Tattva Chintamani, that's his magnum opus. A very large part of that work is devoted to ethical theories. The main thrust of that work too is the theory of inference. I mean, the Tattva Chintamani of Gangesha. But the chapter on ethical issues is also about 250 pages long in print. Coming from someone like Gangesha's, who writes in an extremely condensed style, anybody who has studied Gangesha would know that. It's a lot. I mean, 250 pages in print from Gangesha is like, I would say, 5 to 10 times more in average print. So it's a lot of stuff that, and Gangesha is the leading philosopher of Navya Nyaya, which means that the vast majority of Navya Nyaya philosophers have commented on it and challenged his views and debated it. And there are, how many of them? At least a few hundred of them. A few hundred Navya Nyaya philosophers who have debated, disagreed, tried to refute, and provided their own developments and their own thoughts on the ethical theories that Gangesha has presented in about 250 pages of print in his Tattva Chintamani. So it's there. It's just something that is very hard to study, but it should not be dismissed as with some cavalier remarks like there is no Indian ethics. One just has to do the hard work. So I will start from the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya, but if there is time, Gangesha's contribution to the topic of ethics is far, far more technical and far, far more difficult than what I shall begin with in the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya. So I will let the organizers, the chair, to just give me a hint that, just to stop, and I will. Starting from the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya, the basic ethical viewpoint that one gets there, and I'm going to be doing again, a very, very summary kind of presentation of the ethical viewpoints presented in the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya. So I'm also going to be very brief there. The main point is roughly this, that ethical progress comes from knowledge. The Nyaya Sutra gives a list of 16 topics and says that for moral progress, for living a virtuous life, a life of dharma, this Sanskrit word dharma is used in so many different senses. It's almost similar to the English word thing. Just think of how many things the word thing can stand for. So the word dharma in Sanskrit also has an extremely wide range of meanings. But one of those standard meanings of the word dharma is righteousness, if I may put it that way, righteousness. So if one wishes to live a life of dharma, what should one do? The Nyaya Bhashya and the Nyaya Sutra tells us a bunch of things on this topic, that there are 16 topics such as sources of knowing, the pramanas, the knowables, the most important objects of knowledge, the prameyas, beginning with the self or the Atman as the most important object of knowledge, and a total of 16 topics. The sources of knowing, the chief objects of knowledge, the most important objects of knowledge, the nature of doubt, etc., etc. Knowledge of these 16 topics is necessary for moral progress. And the sources of knowing includes inference. And of course, to study that, we also need to learn about the mistakes we make when we make inferences, the pseudo probentia, the false reasons. So those are the chief 16 topics that the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya lay down as topics, thorough knowledge of which is necessary for moral progress. This is a viewpoint in ethics. One may agree or disagree with this viewpoint, but it is certainly a viewpoint in ethics. Now, what is this knowledge needed for? This kind of knowledge is needed, according to the Nyaya Sutra and the Nyaya Bhashya, for the highest good in life. So they also have a theory of what is the highest good. So in the Nyaya view, the highest good is the absolute relief from all sufferings. Dukkha, suffering, dukkha is very common. It's something that we experience very frequently in our lives, side by side with pleasure. Not that we are always flooded in suffering. Pleasure is also real. It does happen in intervals, and we do enjoy pleasure. It is real. It's not just absence of suffering in the Nyaya view. But pleasures come and go. They are not long-lasting. Typically, suffering lasts longer than pleasure in the Nyaya view, because the causal conditions are available more often. The causal conditions of suffering are more readily available in the Nyaya view than the causal conditions of pleasure. The causal conditions are different, but in real life, in the Nyaya view, the causal conditions of suffering come more frequently than to us than the causal conditions of pleasure. But it can be changed, the Nyaya claims. There are things one can do, and that starts with knowledge. Knowledge is the means to that. Knowledge of the 16 topics, that includes study of the sources of knowing. Why? Because one of the chief obstacles to reducing suffering is false knowledge. False knowledge is responsible for our majority of attachments, raga, and majority of detestations or dvesha, things we like and things we hate. It is part of our common experience that there are many things that we like, and often we hanker for them. We want to have more of them. And there are also many other things that we don't like, and we try to get rid of them. So such attachment and detestation comes mainly from a variety of sources, but in the viewpoint of the Nyaya Sutra and the Bhashya, from false knowledge. And the most important kind of false knowledge, they point out, as the source of the causal conditions of suffering, is false knowledge about the self, mistaking what is not the self as the self. In such common statements as, I am blind, or I am fat, or I am fair, or I am dark, in all these statements, I am identifying myself with the body or a sense organ. When I'm saying I'm blind, I'm saying that, I am something very closely related to, maybe the same as the visual organ. So these, in the Nyaya view, are cases of fundamentally wrong views, mistaking what is not the self for the self. And this we have to combat, and we have to get rid of that. And this is why knowledge of these 16 topics is absolutely necessary. The sources of knowing, knowledge of the sources of knowing, what kind of fallacies there can be when we try to make inferences and arguments, so that we can avoid them. This is their justification for giving that list to get into the, as a means for true moral progress, which means to reach the level of absolute end of all suffering. Now, we can, of course, get rid of some of the sufferings by other ways, by other means. Yes, am I overstepping my time? I'm sorry. Is it okay for me to continue? Okay, all right. I'm assuming that it is okay. Well, so that is why the Nyaya emphasizes that. And so they agree that, we can get rid of some of the sufferings in other ways. Money helps. There is a lot of suffering from starvation or from not having enough shelter, a good shelter. So money can help with that. Wealth can help with getting rid of that kind of suffering. But at the same time, it can also generate plenty of other kinds of suffering. It will not provide for the absolute end of all sufferings, which the Nyaya claims is the highest good and is achievable. So this is why they are emphasizing the importance of knowledge. Okay, I'm not sure that. Anyway, so whenever the chair thinks that I should stop, please tell me so. I just don't know how long I have, but so the point is that we have to make moral progress. We have to engage in disciplining ourselves, what is known as Atma Samskara, purification of the self. The point is by controlling our, the passions, the attachments and detestations, and also confusion. Confusion in the Nyaya view is the most harmful aspect. Confusion, that is false knowledge. And I have given you some examples. And confusion is the main source of attachment and detestation. So this we have to fight to make moral progress. Now, if I can make a huge leap from, if there is time, from the Nyaya Bhashya and the Nyaya Sutra to the Tattva Chintamani of Gangesha, I'm going to the chapter known as Vidhi Vada. Vidhi means an injunction. It's a statement that tells us what one should or should not do. For example, one should tell the truth. That is an example of what is called a vidhi in Sanskrit. One should not engage in sexual promiscuity. That is also a vidhi, a nishedha vidhi, a negative injunction. All right? So in Gangesha's Tattva Chintamani, there is a 250 pages long chapter in print on the topic of vidhi. What is exactly the proper understanding of these expressions when one says one should do this, one should not do this, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do, and claims that this is right or wrong in the moral sense. What is the proper analysis of that? In Gangesha's view, very briefly stated, it's very complicated. Gangesha's theory is very, very complex. Very briefly stated, the moral standard is that we should choose, when we make a moral choice, we should choose what is achievable, kriti sadhya, and what is beneficial, ishtajanaka, while upholding the norms of yama or restraint and niyama or observances. So these restraints and observances are moral prescriptions, such as do not kill unnecessarily or avoidably. No killing should be done that is avoidable. No form of life should be destroyed. And that includes plants and trees as well. Of course, the other animals like lions and tigers and goats, but also trees and plants in the Hindu view, including the Nyaya view. The Nyaya philosophers are Hindu philosophers. They fully support and argue for these Hindu views. So no avoidable destruction of life in any form should be done. Non-stealing, asteya, and so on. And of course, abstinence, continence, those moral injunctions are also there. Then contentment, being satisfied, not hankering for too much, being satisfied with what one has. So each one of these has been discussed, by all these Nyaya philosophers, pages after pages, and they have been challenged by philosophers belonging to other schools of Indian philosophers. So it is amazing to hear when there is so much on the concept of charity in the moral sense, concept of compassion in the moral sense, with Nyaya philosophers offering so many analysis and definitions in hundreds of pages, being challenged.
Okay, thank you. To expedite things, I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in the chat here. Give me just a moment. Do you see that? Has that arrived in the chat? No, it has not. I am attempting to begin. Yeah. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay, so I've put a bunch of stuff in the chat that might be useful. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through my paper. So this paper is a paper that critically engages F.H. Bradley, a British idealist of the 19th century, and Josiah Royce, an American idealist of the 19th century. And it attempts to articulate a notion of the absolute using set theory. And so quickly, I'm going to talk about several different notions that come out of set theory. All of this is non-standard set theory. So in standard set theory, so sets can be thought of as groups or collections. And so in standard set theory, a set is well founded because a set isn't allowed to contain itself as a member. But in non-well-founded set theory, sets can contain themselves as members. And then usually a set can only contain one instance of a member, but multi-set theory allows sets to contain multiple instances of members. So a set could have, for example, 5 instances of the number 1 within the set. And then dynamic set theory allows members to be inserted or deleted from a set. And so if all of this is put together, which is quite possible, we can have a dynamic, non-well-founded multi-set. And what I propose in my paper is that the absolute, God, could be conceptualized as a a dynamic, non-well-founded multi-set. And this would allow for the absolute to contain an infinity of instances of itself, and it would allow that everything within the absolute is, in fact, an instance of the absolute. And in my paper, then I discuss how this is thought of in some ways in the Upanishads, and then also in what's called inaccurately Kashmiri Shaivism, which holds that everything is a manifestation of Shiva. And so the project here for me is to try to articulate ideas that are, at least to me, initially quite strange, and to articulate them in such a way that they become, in a way, familiar, and with the idea that eventually things that might otherwise have seemed to me to be familiar can become strange. And so thank you very much. If there's questions, we could talk about them for a moment, and then if not, we could go to the next presenter. Yeah, Kisser. Kisser, you're muted. Yeah, you have to unmute yourself. You're still muted. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, good.
Okay, so the question I have is that how do you deal with the usual charge of infinite regress if sets are allowed to be members of themselves? That's a well-known difficulty from the viewpoint of the, the kind of set theory that you are proposing, not the well-founded one. How do you deal with this problem? Can you please throw some light on that?
That's actually a feature because the absolute can be a member of itself. It does so in an infinitely recursive way.
Yes, sir. Yes. I hope the screen is visible. I wonder if you'd help me, sir. He smiled as best he could. A sip of water on this morn would surely do me good. We fought all day and fought all night with scarcely any rest. A sip of water, for I have a small pain in my chest. Good morning, everyone, and my salutations to everybody joining from outside. I'm Shomo Shur, a student of English literature. I'm currently pursuing my PhD from the Department of English and Translation Studies at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Mandi. My paper is titled Munitions of the Mouth, Alliteration and the Tone of War in 20th Century Poetry. In this paper, I examine how alliteration, defined as the repetition of the same initial consonant sound in closely placed words, functions as a central acoustic strategy in 20th century war poetry, shaping tone, mood, and ethical response. By alliteration, I mean the repetition of the same consonant sound at the beginning of nearby words, focusing on sound rather than spelling. The kind of repetition produces rhythm, emphasis, memorability, and it is this bodily audible quality that I focus on in this paper. War poetry is often analyzed through imagery, history, or moral stance. Sound, however, works directly on breath and articulation. In poems about violence, repeated sound becomes ethically significant because war itself is repetitive, embodied, and endured. Michael Mack's Small Pain in My Chest presents a wounded soldier who repeatedly minimizes his injury. The poem derives its power from understatement and denial rather than heroic expressions. The recurring phrase, small pain in my chest, exemplifies restrained alliteration. The soft repetition of initial consonant sounds creates compression and quietness, reinforcing the poem's refusal of spectacle. What would my wife be thinking of her man so strong and grown? If she could see me sitting here, too weak to stand alone? Could my mother have imagined, as she held me to her breast, that I'd be sitting here one day with this pain in my chest? Alliteration is easy to spot, and it makes the poem hauntingly rhythmic. Wilfred Owen's Spring Offensive depicts soldiers resting before a sudden and catastrophic assault. The poem is structured around a sharp contrast between calm anticipation and explosive violence. Phrases such as long grass swirled and buttercups blessed employ gentle alliteration. These sounds slow the line and lull the listener, establishing calm before the destruction. When violence erupts, Owen shifts to harsher alliterations, as in blast, bullets, and fury. The forceful repetition mirrors the physical assault and disrupts earlier lyricism. Vikram Sheth's A Doctor's Journal entry for August 6, 1945, recounts the Hiroshima bombing from a doctor's perspective. The poem is marked by clinical restraint rather than emotional outcry. Examples such as dust swirled and silence was common to all show muted alliteration. Sound here suppresses emotion, reinforcing professional detachment and ethical restraint. Siegfried Sassoon's Everyone Sang records a sudden moment of collective release, while Bob Dylan's John Brown exposes hollow patriotic rhetoric. In Sassoon's Suddenly Burst Out Singing, repeated sibilance enacts liberation. In Dylan's Good Old Fashioned War, blunt alliteration produces slogan like ease, revealing ideological emptiness. To conclude, this paper has argued that alliteration in 20th century war poetry is not decorative but central to how tone and ethical meaning are produced. By shaping breadth, rhythm, and articulation, alliteration function as a form of ethical labor, allowing poets to resist spectacle, critique rhetoric, and make violence acoustically accountable. Attending to sound, therefore, is essential to understanding how war poetry makes violence felt, remembered, and judged. Thank you.
Assuming it's Bob Dylan and not Dylan Thomas, but
Yes, sir, it's Bob Dylan.
yes. All right, so we're going to just continue along. So Dr. Abdul Rashid Sheikh will speak on bonded tendency and political awakening. Can you proceed? He's offline? Oh, okay. Suddenly we're finding ourselves making up for lost time. Okay, so he's not presenting? Or he's right here? Oh, offline presentation. Okay. So next go down the list. Okay. All right, is Akhtar Alam from JNU here with us? Mr. Alam, are you here? So we're swinging from being in a race to get everybody in on time. So is Ambalika Das and Dr. Ratula Mukherjee here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please proceed, and I guess we'll see if we can do it in 15 minutes, but we might be able to go over time if needs be, as we've suddenly picked up some ground. So,
Thank you, sir.
so please proceed. Please start. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to all present here. I will be sharing my screen, so please let me know that my screen is visible. Is it visible to everybody? Hello?
Yes, we see it. Yes, it's there. We see.
Thank you so much. So, today we are stepping beyond the traditional curriculum of traditional boundaries of the classroom. Although our curriculum focuses on pedagogy and academic excellence, there is an invisible curriculum we often overlook. It is the mental readiness of the future educators. Hello everyone, my name is Ambalika Das and I am a third semester student from AC Training College. How teachers can become the mental health allies So I'm extremely thankful to Dr. Ratula Mukherjee for guiding me in the completion of the paper. Before we address the solutions, we must define our foundation. Starting it with simple, what is mental health? It is not just the absence of illness, it is what one calls a wholesome balance. It is the resilience to stand firm during life storms, and as per true standards, it is the ability to realize one's own potential while contributing productively to the society. Now, if we imagine a balanced scale, and on one hand we have internal psychological maturity and positive self-esteem, while on the other hand we have the ability to regulate our emotions and maintain the social effectiveness. When these four pillars are in sync, a student can navigate the high-wired act of the demanding academic career with precision and grace. So, coming to the transition phase, so BA students are in a unique adulting gap. They are managing the stress trial, heavy academic load, part-time jobs, and even evolving personal relationships that could lead to marriage. So this transition phase is often like a pressure cooker if that's where isolations and aggression can surface up if the right support systems aren't in place. So what is the goal of our study? The goal of our study is very simple. We aim to identify the root cause of the distress, connect the mental wellness to the academic achievement, and ultimately create robust support plans. We aren't just looking for problems, we are building a ladder towards a more sustainable educational movement. Now, if I talk about the significance of the study, by aligning with the NEP 2020, teachers are enhancing their teaching quality and breaking the long-standing stigmas. But there must remain some vigilancy about the areas of improvement too, particularly the risk of misinterpretation, specifically the tone and choice of words used by the teachers, that could possibly and unintentionally lead to trauma and trigger the unhealed parts of the students. Of course, the emotional overload is another factor, and ensuring that the ethical privacy barriers are respected. So what does a struggling student look like? These challenges can be categorized into 4 quadrants. From the academic impact, such as indecision in events, lack of concentration, lack of vision, lack of aspirations, to internal struggles like lack of self-esteem, hopelessness, social withdrawal, isolation, and to even external risks such as substance use, criminal activity, and even suicidal thoughts. So these aren't just bullet points, these are the daily realities of many students in the corridors. Now, if we come to the ethical issues in our study, So when a teacher reaches out to help, he or she must do so ethically. They must ensure confidentiality to avoid the risk of misinterpretation or vulnerability, particularly getting mocked or exposed. So they must ensure that they use the right words while communicating and provide a secure environment so that their students can open up to them without hesitation. There might also be a consent barrier from the guardians, as they might not feel comfortable to send their children off site if the study demands a close observation. This is not just a legal hurdle, it is a moral imperative to build trust. So, how does a teacher intervene? Starting it with class talk method that focuses on normalizing the conversation on mental health, promoting open-ended discussions on stress management to reduce stigma and build awareness. Then coming to the conference method that focuses on the personalized one-to-one communication and support between the teacher and the student, ultimately establishing trust and confidentiality between them. Or the group guidance that ensures that no student feels that they're fighting their battles alone. It typically involves forming a common group where individuals share their experiences of their distresses and discuss about what worked for them in their times of distress so that other individuals in the group can benefit. And if we look outside the classroom, we can refer to excursions and field visits that uses nature as the healer. It ultimately gives a joyful learning experience and reduces stress. It gives time to pause from our hectic lives and self-heal. But if the problem needs a professional help, the greatest role a teacher can play is to know when to refer a student to a professional psychologist. That would obviously depend on tests, therapies, or even medications if needed. So after talking this much, is there sufficient awareness among students about mental health? Unfortunately, the biggest barrier till today is the stigma on the concept of mental health. So the goal of our study is to replace that fear with education by spreading awareness, running campaigns, increasing literacy on this rising issue, and increasing exposure to accessible mental health services. We can turn a culture of silence to a culture of support. To conclude, the mantra for a happy life is very simple, follows a very simple and profound equation. A healthy body plus a healthy mind. But ironically, it is really hard for us to imply in our daily lives. So it is the collective duty of the teachers, peers, and of course the society as whole to secure a healthy future from the starting itself, from the students. So it is to be the allies that the students need today to define a better future. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and I'm open for questions.
Interesting, and I think a very useful thing for those of us who deal with students, many of whom have problems. So do we have time for questions? So please go ahead. Would you like the microphone? Can you hear me, ma'am? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we have the new NEP, on which I think that the teachers of the private schools are on the back foot regarding all this, the issues which you have raised. A group of students will just, create nonsense in the class. The teacher will try to discipline, and the same group of teachers, the students, they will go and complain to the principal, and the principal gives them a suspension.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, this is the one which you are facing these days, because the school principal somehow want to retain the students because there is money involved here. In the private school I am talking about. At the same time, there are other issues like Sports Act and all these things, and other issues like this sort of distorted issues goes to the paper.
Now, a child who is not having a perfect environment at home will actually pass on his behavior in the school. And then he or she will try to assemble students and complaining as a teacher, which will not be justified many a times. I'm telling you because I happen to be the president of the Guardians Forum. I'm supposed to be with the guardians, I'm with the guardians, but teachers are facing the music these days. So can you highlight on this?
Yes, so that's a very great question actually. See, as we say that the society starts from home, like the world starts from home. So the first duty that the first working is like the good parenting, because from childhood, if the values are instilled in the child of how to handle something that is in stress or academic pressure or some kind of any clashes occurring in the outside world, that includes of course the school, colleges and further studies or workplace. So from the childhood, the parents need to instill those values to deal with the problems peacefully and thinking properly, and not just like protesting without any base or without any following any kind of specific rules and regulations. So if I believe that if these values are instilled with good parenting, then these issues can be reduced from the starting itself. And then comes the environment that the school provides and how the educational transfers are taking place.
This is a very big factor in private schools these days. And private schools, in the small metros, they are very dominant. This is a dominant feature. Public schools are closed. So public school, you have your job security and all these things. But the teachers, there is nobody to talk about the teachers in the private schools. This is the problem which is being faced. And 2 or 3 girls, if they, join hands together, they will, paint the teacher in black regarding physical molestation and all this. I have experienced this. There was a committee and they found out the entire allegation was false, but the teacher was suspended. So these sort of things continue especially in the last 3 years. So this is what I want to say, that this should be checked, because NEP gives a lot of powers to the school principal and the school administration, and the weight is on the higher side with regard to the children who are attending school. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I hope.
Questions?
Yes. I hope you got my answer, sir.
Okay, Ambalika, I just want to mention something that I've been at the same university for 38 years, and I've had encounters with students who have serious problems, either mentally or they just have serious problems from their home, where they come from. And the thing I would just point out that in the early years, certain things would happen and there would be almost nothing for me to do other than have to guide the student myself. And sometimes I'm dealing with students who are a bit crazy and become hostile. It's very uncomfortable, very difficult. Now, there are procedures, so when a student comes and wants to unload problems and tell me I absolutely have to, I'm required to go, to pick up the phone and make contact with the school's, health and wellness people and report it. Even if the student told me things in confidence, I'm required by law to report it. And it's much better that way because it protects me, the teacher, whoever's hearing all these horror stories, terrible things from the home, but it also causes the resources of the university to start helping the student. And so these are things that, over decades have been instituted, and it makes things much better. So I don't know about India and the Indian system, but the point I'm making is there are better ways to deal with these problems than just leaving it to the teacher and the student, because sometimes the problems are bigger and more complicated And it protects the teacher, it protects the student, it protects the university. And so I hope whatever lessons the University of North Carolina system put into place could be beneficial in other parts of the world, because I think these problems, it's not easy growing up, it's not easy dealing with the pressures of college and finance and being away from home. So these are all things that all of us in the profession could benefit from. So thank you very much for your research, because it's a very important thing to be working on.
Yes, so thank you so much, sir, for giving us this opportunity to speak in front of the professionals. Thank you so much.
So, all right, so we're going to proceed. Oh, the session is offline?
No, you will continue online sessions. Maybe he is now interested in the next.
It's on the other page. Hang on as we get this. Which one? Okay. All right. So you said Gopal Das? Okay. So we're going to jump ahead on our program. So we're going to hear from Gopal Das and Dr. Ranjan Shakar on environmental challenges and urban refugee-like vulnerability in the slums of Jalpaiguri town, West Bengal. So Gopal Das, please, you have the floor. Please present.
Hello. Hello, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, go ahead, and you have approximately 20 minutes before we'll tell you to wrap it up. Oh, 10 minutes, I'm told. Okay, we have, I guess, 3 more presenters, so. Okay, so try and present. Okay, so aim for a 10-minute presentation, I'm told. So take it away.
Okay, sir. So first of all, I would like to extend my heartiest gratitude to the respected ma'am and present here to this conference. So my topic is the environmental challenges and the urban refugees like vulnerability in slums of Jalpaiguri town, West Bengal. So actually, we know the rapid urbanization has accelerated the growth of slums in Indian towns, and many. It is also known as to that in many small and the medium-sized towns, the slums area or some informal settlements have rapidly increased day by day. So slum is normally developed along the peripheral area of a city or along the railway track or some areas characterized by the environmental pollution and the environmental degradation. My paper is on the environmental degradation and the environmental challenges in such settlement produced by the anthropogenic factors of the human activity. Slum settlement is defined as the settlement characterized by the poor living condition, environmentally unfit for living, lack of some basic facilities like healthy drinking water, sanitation, hygienic foods, electricity, and the proper drainage conditions. So the main emphasis should be given on the environmental stress and the displacement pushed vulnerable population into cities. Slum represent the space of environmental risks and the social exclusion, and Jalpaiguri town present a significant case of such urban vulnerability. But in case the conceptual framework, slum dwellers as the urban refugee-like population, no refugees in the legal sense. Displaced only the people displaced due to flood and the river erosion, livelihood loss, environmental degradation, and historical displacement. Because during 1971, during the partition from Bangladesh, many people come from the Bangladesh and they have settled in some areas in Jalpaiguri town. So they experience insecure similarities to urban refugees. So the term used as an analytical concept. So main drivers, we have to know the main drivers of the displacement. So the communal disturbances, Bangladesh Liberation War, and rural urban migration due to the livelihood and environmental stress. Not only that, but rural people in many cases for searching job opportunities, many rural peoples are migrated towards the urban area and they have permanently settled in some cities in Jalpaiguri also. Settlement pattern, forced settlement in urban slums and located on the main location on the marginal and environmentally risky land. So what are the environmental challenges? Poor sanitation, unsafe drinking water, drainage, culture drainage, frequent flooding, improper waste disposal, overcrowding, and unhygienic surroundings. And main outcome is the environmental insecurity, health and livelihood vulnerability, urban refugee-like vulnerability, not legal, but in an illegal sense only. So here is my study area. Jalpaiguri town is located northern part of the West Bengal, and it is diversified area, the northern part of the West Bengal, and is also located in the Jalpaiguri district, which is also known as the Duas region, which is diversified in vegetation and the climatic also. So, and it is the environmentally sensitive and flood-prone region, and rapid growth of the informal settlements can be seen in this area, like Siliguri town. So, growth of the Jalpaiguri town. Jalpaiguri district has the 4 towns after the partition from Alipurduar district. Before 2024 to 2000, before 2014, Jalpaiguri district was merged with the Alipurduar district, and after that it is separated from the Alipurduar district, and presently Jalpaiguri district has 4 towns, among which Jalpaiguri town is the largest. It was established in 1869. At the initial stage, it functioned as the Jalpaiguri Union and performed municipal activities until April 1885. After that, it came into being as the Jalpaiguri municipality with a population of near about 8,000 in 1886 to 1887. At the time, the municipal area was divided into 7 wards. After independence, the area was divided into 19 wards in 1967, covering a functional area of 10 square kilometer approximate. Subsequently, in 1995, the municipal area was expanded to 12.5 square kilometer and divided into 25 wards. Around 7.875 square kilometer or 63% of the total land is used for the residential purpose, and out of this, near about 4.82 square kilometer or 61.20% of the total residential area is occupied by the slum dwellers. So it is very considerable fact that a huge largest portion of the area is covered by the slum dwellers. So the basic objectives of my study is that to examine the environmental challenges in slum areas, to analyze living conditions of slum dwellers, to understand urban refugees like vulnerability, to suggest policy measures for inclusive urban planning. And methodology, this is fundamentally a descriptive of the empirical study. I have collected some primary data for field observation and household interactions, secondary data, census report, municipal records, and the published literature, and to investigate or to examining the spatial pattern of the distribution of slums in Jalpaiguri town, the nearest neighbor analysis has been adopted. Now, how the population has been grown in this town, the continuous emigration from the rural people in search of food and the job to the district town as a whole, both for the town and the district, the population growth rate decreased. After 1951, people were not attracted to live in Jalpaiguri because the low rate of the development and the lack of infrastructural facilities of the town, because at that time the town was not developed. By this time, Siliguri developed rapidly. Siliguri developed rapidly and attract more people, and many people migrated from outside area to the Siliguri area, Siliguri town. The population growth of Jalpaiguri town was very sluggish in compared to the other urban centers of the district, but a continuous immigration took place during the communal disturbance in 1964 and liberation war in 1971 in Bangladesh. Again, there was a sudden rise in the growth rate during 2021. So here is the table. That is, we can from this table we can see how the population has been grown from 1901 to 2001. The distributional pattern of the slums in Jalpaiguri municipality, the nearest neighbor approach has been adopted. At present study, slums of a particular ward has been assumed as one unit for that ward. Hence, 25 wards have 25 slums, and after that unit, and the distance between them has been measured neighbor distance and expected mean nearest neighbor distance. In this case, the observed mean nearest neighbor distance has been calculated as 0.592, and the value of the expected or the theoretical mean distance is 0.354. The value of nearest neighbor index or R is 1.672. Since the value R lies between 1 to 2.15, so it may be said that the observed arrangement of the slums to the word is dispersed pattern. So every word are associated with such category of the settlement. So now here we will discuss about the major environmental challenges. Based on the data which collected from the field observation, here I have summarized some environmental challenges faced by this town by such category of the settlement in this town. That is the inadequate sanitation facilities. The field survey reveals that the slum areas of this town are characterized with severe environmental challenges that significantly affected the quality of life of the residents, with 64% of the household using kacha sanitation facilities, while only 36% have access to semi-pakka sanitation. Next one is the unsafe drinking water. One thing I would like to mention here, that the most of the slum areas are located near the riverside areas. Okay, and in this case, the unsafe drinking water, the survey shows that 66% of the household depends on the municipal taps, while 18% rely on the hand pumps and only 12% on the tube wells. Dependence on the hand pumps and tube wells, often without regular water quality monitoring, raise the concern regarding water safety and the health risks, especially during the monsoon periods. Poor drainage and frequent flooding. Drainage conditions in the slum areas are highly inadequate. About 72% of the areas are associated with the kacha nalas, which are poorly maintained and frequently clogged. As a result, most of the slum areas are flood affected, particularly during heavy rainfall, leading to waterlogging, contamination of the water sources, and spread of disease. Solid waste accumulation, solid waste management practice further aggravate environmental problems. The survey indicates that 78% of the households dispose of water in the open space, while 18% use dark pits. So in this case, the educational level or the awareness program is also very effective. The lack of an optimum organized waste disposal system leads to the accumulation of garbage, false odors, and the proliferations of insects and rodents. So here is some snaps I have taken from field observation during monsoon periods. The many area has been affected by the floods, and after the flood situation, the many peoples are suffer from different kinds of disease. This is my told. Slum settlements are marked by the overcrowded housing and hygienic surroundings, intensifying the environmental stress and the health vulnerability. These conditions collectively reflect a high degree of the environmental insecurity, reinforcing the urban refugee-like vulnerability of slum dwellers in this town. It is also the primary data. So here the education level, the 78% are only the primary education level, 14% secondary, and only 8% the AHS. Occupation, the economic condition also very poor in this in such settlements of this town. The informal labor, 84% or more than 84% are the informal labors. Formal labors only 10% and others 6%.
Could wrap up. That would be good.
So analytical link, what is the analytical link to the urban refugee vulnerability? The environmental conditions living in the slum areas of the Jalpaiguri town indicates a high degree of the vulnerability comparable to that experienced by the urban refugees. Inadequate sanitation, unsafe water sources, poor drainage, frequent flooding, and the improper waste disposal expose the slum dwellers to continued environmental risks, overcrowding, and unhygienic surroundings, further intensify the health insecurities. These conditions reflect a lack of basic urban service and institutional support similar to the realities of displaced populations seeking refugees in cities. As many residents have migrated due to historical displacement, environmental stress, and the livelihood insecurity, their continued exposure to the environmental hazard reinforce a condition of urban refugee like vulnerability marked by the insecurity, marginalization, and the exclusion from the formal urban planning. So key findings are the environmental problems dominate the everyday life in slums, vulnerabilities, multidimensional. It may be environmental, social, or economic. Slum dwellers live in the conditions similar to the urban refugees. Environmental displacement plays a major role in the slum formation, and policy suggestions, improvement of the sanitation and drainage infrastructure should be taken under consideration. Safe drinking water provisions, inclusion of slum areas in the municipal planning, environmental sensitive urban development policies, recognition of the displaced urban population. The study highlight the need for inclusive urban planning that recognize the environmental displacement and integrate slum population into the sustainable development. So one thing I would like to mention that this paper the actually my field survey is continuously going on, and some data also yet to be collected. So the conclusion part, the slum areas of the Jalpaiguri town face severe environmental challenges related to the sanitation, drinking water, drainage, flooding, and waste disposal. Field survey findings show the widespread use of kacha sanitation, poor drainage, historical displacement, and the continuous rural-urban migration have contributed to the growth of these vulnerable settlements. Although not legal refugees, slum dwellers experience the urban refugee-like vulnerability due to the environmental insecurity and exclusion from the urban services. Addressing these challenges requires the inclusive, environmental sensitive urban planning and improved basic infrastructure. But nowadays, many people from Bangladesh and outside Nepal, Bhutan are migrated towards the Jalpaiguri districts, and they have permanently settled. So the population of this district as well as of this town has increased very rapidly, which intensified the urban expansion also. So thank you, sir.
So thank you very much. And we still have 2 more to go. So without further delay, let's hear from Dr. Suman Sikdar. Pintu Biswas, excuse me. Pintu Biswas and Dr. Ranjan Sharkar, Socio-Cultural Determinants of Migration and Livelihood Diversification among Riparian Communities in the Kuluk River Basin, Uttar Dinajpur District, West Bengal. So, Pintu Biswas, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
So begin.
Yes.
About 12 minutes, right? 10 to 12.
Yes, sir.
Sir, my screen is visible.
Okay, sir. Then you try me.
Mr. Dash, you have to stop sharing your screen.
Yes, now my screen is visible. So my screen is visible now.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Then I'll start now.
Very good noon, all of the respected speakers, chairperson, and co-chairpersons, and the delegates. Today I am presenting my seminar paper in the International Conference on Where Migration, Human Rights, and Ethical Theories, organized by the Siliguri College of Commerce in collaboration with the Institute for Cross-Cultural Studies and Academic Exchange. My paper entitled Socio-Cultural Determinants of Migration and Livelihood Diversification Among Riparian Communities in the Kulik River Basin, Uttar Dinajpur District, West Bengal. Basically, the riparian communities along the Kulik River in Uttar Dinajpur District, West Bengal, are highly dependent on river-based resources for their livelihoods, including agricultural, fishing, and livestock rearing. However, over the past few decades, these communities have faced increasing climatic and environmental stress, rising temperatures, erratic rainfalls, frequent droughts, delayed monsoons, and recurring extreme weather events have disrupted traditional livelihood system and heightened vulnerability. Despite the region's exposure to both floods and droughts, community perceptions often reflect greater concern over water scarcity and crop failures than flood-related hazards. These perceived shifts in climatic patterns, coupled with increased incidence of pest and illness, have placed significant strain on the adaptive capacity of the local households. Migration has emerged as a crucial livelihood strategy among riparian households along the Kulik River in Uttar Pradesh district, West Bengal, shaped by socio-cultural dynamics, economic stress, and environmental uncertainty. The present study examines the socio-cultural reasons and patterns of migration adapted by riparian communities for accessing new livelihood opportunities. And my study area, basically the Kulik River Basin, are along the riparian inhabitants lies this Kulik River basin lies within the mature alluvial landscape of the Indo-Bangladesh Baring Tract, extending from 25 degree 32 minute north to 26 degree 10 minute 0 second 6 second north latitude and 87 degree 60 minute east to 88 degree 24 minute 56 second east longitude. This river basically originated in the Thakurgaon district of Bangladesh and flows into the Uttar Dinajpur districts of West Bengal, India. eventually joining the Nago River near Bishar village in the Itahar Community Development Block in Raiganj subdivision of Uttar Pradesh district, West Bengal. Basically, the elevation across the basin ranges from a maximum of 71 meters at its source to minimum of 17 meters at the confluence with the Naga River. This slight difference of only 54 meters of elevations of the river Kulik from their source to mouth. And historically, these rivers are basically direct tributary of the Mahananda River. However, tectonic disturbances redirected its flow, resulting in its present confluences with the Nagar River. And numerous oxbow lakes and paleo channels, about 281 in number, dot the landscape on both banks, serving as a geometric evidences of the river's historical shift and dynamic course changes. And this is the table which shows the geographical and hydrological characteristics of the Kulik River and its Indian segments. And this table illustrated that the Kulik River, emphasizing its sinuous nature and partial distribution. The river's total actual length of 136.34 kilometer and its straight line length is 70.454 kilometer, reflects significant meandering which contributes to floodplain development and lateral erosion. In Indian territory, 49 kilometers of the river flows through a 440.59 square kilometer basin area. Overall, the partial and hydrological features of the Kulik River basins make it an ecologically dynamic but flood-prone landscapes. And this is the location map of my study area, and this is also prepared by me. Here you can see in the right side, in the upper part, from the Bangladesh, the river also entered into the Uttar Dinajpur districts of West Bengal in India, and also merged in the last part. You can see the river also merged with the Nagar River, and this is the tributary of also Mahananda River. And we can see here in this figure, this is the location map of 6 selected riparian villages, which I have been selected for my study. And this is the table which is also shows the perimeter and area wise left bank and right bank villages along the Kulik River. And I have also selected 3 left bank villages and 3 right bank villages for my study. And this figure shows the riparian sample villages of the left bank of the Kulik River, and this figure also shows the right bank riparian villages along with the selected riparian villages along the Kulik River. And this figure also shows the overall left bank and right bank villages and selected villages for this study. And my objective was that to analyze the socio-cultural and economic drivers influencing migration decision, and to examine the nature, frequency, duration, and occupational pattern of migration for new livelihood adaptation. And for this study, I have also used some methodology basically to achieve these objectives. A mixed method approach combining quantitative and qualitative technique was employed here, and the present study surveyed 7.31% to 37.31% household heads from each village, totaling of 300 households, and also a structured questionnaire also designed for this purpose. And I also used here stratified purposive sampling techniques for data collections. And this table shows the respondent distributions across riparian villages along the Kulik River. I have already told that I have also collected 300 respondent from the riparian villages of 6 selected riparian villages. And here we can see that 37.31% of the respondents also collected from the Abdul Ghata village, because their households number is small in nature. And I also collected at least 7.31% of the respondent, because in Kodugram village there is the household number is huge, like 684. And in this table, I also give some age-wise structure of the respondent, where the data is collected from, whom the data is collected. Basically, more stress given on to the age group of 25 to 50 years than above 50 years for better understanding the data. And then here in this table, I also shows the sex-wise distribution of the respondent. Basically, I have collected 81% of the data from the male respondents and 19% of the data from the female respondent of the selected represent villages. And this table also shows the village-wise distribution of total family members. Basically, in the selected 300 samples, household heads, we have collected here the total family members are 1,332, and the male member is 678 and female member is 654. And this table also shows the present livelihood scenario in the 6 representative villages along the Kulik River. Basically, the most of the people's residents are also engaged in the agriculture and allied activities like agriculture farmer, agriculture labor, crop farming, crop livestock farming, crop and fish farming, fish and livestock farming, fishing, and business and trade also like grocery shop, tea stall, other retail shops, waste collector or scrap dealing or bhangari business also. And this is the another table which also shows the present livelihood of the 6 representative villages. Like some of the people are also engaged in labor and services like daily wage labor, toto driving, car driving, carpentry, mason, service works, conductor, barbers, and craft and specialized livelihoods like bamboo crafts making, pottery making, jewelry making, plumbing, push cart driving, etc. And here you can see in the bar graphs the present livelihoods of the 6 representative villages also. And these are the some snapshots of the present livelihoods of the 6 selected representative villages we can see here. And in this table, we can see the socio-cultural reasons behind the migration of the behind migration to new livelihoods in the 6 riparian villages. Basically, we can see here the most of the migration are also done for the economic instability and aspirations. We can see here this because here the respondent says that they for their they compensate the household incomes, they migrated, and in their present situation they get some less profit from their occupations or their business. That's why they go to another place for better livelihoods, and better economic offer also one of the reasons for that. And some of the respondents says that the food and basic needs insecurity is the reasons for the migration from their present place. And another some of the respondent, like 17% of the respondents says that the declining of traditional livelihoods and knowledge, basically lack of traditional knowledge, loss of agriculture, loss of wage labor is one of the major reasons, sociocultural reasons for their migration to new livelihoods. And we can see here the bar graphs which shows the socio-cultural regions behind the migration to new livelihoods along the riparian villages of Kulik River. In this table, we can show the frequency of migration to new livelihoods in the last years across riparian villages. Basically, most of the people says that those are migrated. 41.67% says they migrated once time in the last year, and 13% of the respondents says that they migrated twice in the last year, because some of the during the hardship time in the present livelihoods they migrated from their present situation. And this figure bar diagram also shows this situation of the selected riparian villages, and their durations of migration to new livelihoods. Basically, most of the people's respondents says that they migrated at least 3 months, for 3 months, and some of the respondents shows that they migrated 2 months, because the majority of the respondents says that they migrated mainly for 3 months from their present residents during their agricultural hardship times. And this figure also shows that. And this table also shows that the type of work they performed in the new livelihoods. Most of the respondents says that they perform like an unskilled non-agricultural laborers in the new livelihood situation. And 31.8% of the respondents says that they migrated and the new place and they work as an agricultural labor. And some of the respondents says they worked as a skilled non-agricultural labor. They migrated for some services, they migrated for the business purpose, and etc. And we can see here the selected villages, Bahin Paharpur village, basically the peoples are migrated for from another place, primarily migrate to state like Punjab, Delhi and Haryana to work in plywood factories as tailors, agricultural laborers, masons, or helper workers. And in the Bamoha villages, selected villages, basically the people's residents are migrated to cities like Delhi, Haryana, Mumbai, and Gujarat for better paying job as laborers, masons, or shuttering workers. And in Abdulghata villages, some of the people's residents are occasionally migrate for 3 to 4 months to different states such as Nepal to work as masons or helper laborers. And these are some glimpses of their livelihood activities. In Kodgram villages, one of the important and significant aspect that the Pal community of the Kodgram villages, they travel during winter, this time, to barter their pottery for food grains like rice and wheat, or sell them for cash. This method is locally referred to as gamal, in local language gamal, or gamali. And furthermore, other residents of Kodgrams are also involved in diverse occupation like toto driving, electricians work, and etc. And in Bhadgara village, we can also see some of the peoples are migrated from their present residence due to some socio-ecological backgrounds. And one of the important thing of the Paharpur village, Pararpukur village, that some of the peoples are collected their unique toll collection system. This is called khuni, where they collect rice or money from local for crossing a bamboo bridge over the river. The persons collecting this toll is called ghatowal. To cross the bamboo bridge, locals pay rupees 300 to 400 rupees a year, or 20 rupees per crossing. And basically, some of the residents are households also use some coping mechanism during some their hardship times or during some natural disasters. Like you can see in this table that they reduces their amount of food per meal. They go to bed without foods. They reduce meat consumption. They purchase food on credits. Reduce healthcare spending. Lease farmland. Sell farmland. Sell labor in advance, and seek farm work, etc. And also one of the important thing that 10.67% of the respondents says that they migrated to city or other area for coping their livelihood disruptions. And this is the bar diagram which shows that the coping strategies. And for household adaptive capacity, we can see here the main adaptation strategies are adapted by the household during some hardship time and during some hazards. The 39.67% of the respondents says that they migrated from their present place to another place. And yes, sir. And this table also shows the migrations of households members, employment across selected different villages. We can here see that they migrated sometimes. Basically, 29.67% of the respondents says that, and some of the respondents also says that they migrated 31.67%. And this table also says the number of years respondents have stayed in the selected dependent communities. And my major findings was that migration is a key livelihood strategy among riparian households, driven mainly by economic instability. Economic aspiration and income compensation account for 57% of migration decisions, and food insecurity and loss of market access significantly influence livelihood shifts, 21.67% basically, and decline to traditional agriculture and wage labor contributes to 70% of migration. Migration is predominantly short-term and seasonal rather than permanent, and single episode migration is more common than repeated migration, and the most frequent migration duration is 3 months, indicating temporary income needs. And migrants mainly engage in unskilled non-agricultural and agricultural labor, and skilled employment and service sector participation remain limited. And migration also act as a coping and adaptive response to natural hazards and livelihood shocks. And some of the recommendations of my yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I am in last slide, sir. I am the last slide, sir. Please promote local livelihood diversification to reduce distress-driven migration and strengthen skill development programs for riparian youth to improve job equality. Develop village-level disaster preparedness and livelihood recovery plans. Formulate integrated river basin development policies linking livelihoods, migration, and hazard managements. And thank you all for listening.
Presentation of the session, and that is Akhtar Alam from JNU. Please begin. All right, and try and see if we can do this in 10, 11 minutes. So, Akhtar Alam, are you there? We have Akhtar Alam. We're still behind our schedule, so if we stop now. Who's next? So there's, we're hoping Akhtar Alam shows up. Is there anyone else who's been in the wait, in the queue? I don't think so, but maybe. Akhtar Alam, if you're not there.
One certificate. So now we will distribute one certificate. So please, just to interrupt the session because Tommy sir will be going for airport. So please, Tommy sir, please come over the stage. We will be distributing certificate for you. Actually, you will be getting two certificates. One is for chairing the session and another is for the paper presentation. Please, sir.
Hello, Chief. It's day 2, second technical session, right? So here we will Miss Shedding Lemu Bhutia. Shedding Lemu Bhutia. Miss Shedding Lemu Bhutia. Okay, then we are going to present our start our next session, second technical session. So here all presentations will be offline mode. So I will request Sagar to carry on this session.
Okay. Hello. So we'll be continuing the next session after the online session, and in this session we have presenters. I'm just taking out the presenters' name accordingly. First will be Dr. A.B. Sheikh. Second, Jyotirmay Vishwas and Sagar Rakshit. Next, Pranab Karmakar and Shubhankar Paul. Then Akshara Singhai, Divyashree Nath, Dr. Suman Sikdar, and Chandan Roy, Shubhendu Adhikari, and Dr. Lalta Prasad. It's a combined paper. And this session will be chaired by our respected Dr. Abhijit Bhattacharjee, Principal of Law College, Jalpaiguri, and respected Dr. Nitai Saha, Associate Professor, Munshi Premchand College. So I'm requesting our respected chairpersons to take their seats on the dais so that we can carry forward the session.
Dr. A.B. Sheikh, please come forward. হ্যালো আয়ুব, একটা নোটপ্যাড নিয়ে আসো আর একটা পেন। Okay, sir, now session is yours, so please carry on.
Now the second technical session is going to be started, and it is organized by Siliguri College of Commerce, and the topic is work, migration, human rights, and ethical theories. And I hope all the areas are covered and interdisciplinary, and everybody can participate in this seminar. And I hope that the first participants will start now. Please carry on.
Good afternoon to everyone in this session. Thank you, Chairman Sir, for giving me the opportunity to be here. And I also thank you to the organizers of the conference who gave me an opportunity to come here from a distant place. And this place is also a distant place for me, because almost there's a distance of about 3,000 kilometers. The theme I have chosen for the conference to present over here, it is about the Jammu and Kashmir state. I am talking about the 20th century Jammu and Kashmir. When we see the state came into being, because prior to 1846, the Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, they were the three separate, we can say, administrative constituents. And it was by virtue of a treaty between the British colonial government, or the British Indian government, and the Maharaja Gulab Singh in 1846 at Amritsar, that we see that the present state of Jammu and Kashmir came into being. No doubt we all know that in 2019 the abrogation took place and it is now a union territory, but I am talking about the 20th century Jammu and Kashmir. And my argument is here because this theme which I have chosen, it is related with, it is one of the sub-themes of my PhD thesis, and that is about that PhD thesis has, we can say, explored that how economic factor played its key role in the emergence of a people's movement against the Prince of the Jammu and Kashmir at that very time. This border tendency and political awakening, how agrarian, I will little bit deliberate upon this, that how this overtaxation, how this, we can say the state monopolies, how this, we can say the forced labor, how these factors, that is the factors, they are directly or indirectly, we can say, connected with the denial of the human rights, and how they paved the way for the mass awakening, or for, we can say, for the political consciousness among the people of the Jammu and Kashmir. As we know, that when the same Maharaja took over as the ruler of the state, we see after taking over as a ruler, because the agreement which took place at Amritsar between Maharaja and the British Indian government, it was a sort of deal, and most of the historians who have written on this, they are, we can say, referring to this deal as a sale deal, that because Maharaja was from the Jammu, as one of the historians, he has argued like this way, that is the Premnath Bajaj, who is a contemporary of the times, he has written the book, and he has argued that for Jammu it was a home state for Maharaja, and Ladakh he conquered, and Kashmir he purchased. So the three administrative constituents, they were having the separate historical background in front of the Maharaja's vision. So it is said that, and you might have read it about it, because this is a content generation age, we have so much content available, you can, we can say, Google it, you can see, most of the historians, they have, we can say, referred this agreement, that is the agreement of Amritsar, or we can say, we call it the Treaty of Amritsar, as a sale deal, that the Maharaja purchased Kashmir, and for that purchasement he paid an amount of 75 lakh rupees to the British Indian government. So we can say, when he became the ruler, it is said that, and I will not discuss we can say in detail that what type of sources I have traced it from the ancient times to medieval, then the modern, because we have the most referred book in our Kashmir that talks about up to the 12th century Kashmir, it is Raj Tarangi. It says that the people from the ancient times, they were enjoying, they were having the, we can say, property rights of their own land. And when we see the establishment of this new ruling dynasty, and in 1846 we see the first ruler of this dynasty, or the founder of this dynasty, Maharaja Gulab Singh, he declared the, we can say, property rights null and void. And because with the perception that he said that I purchased this land, and out of this purchasement, nobody is having the property rights of their own land. So it is in this way I have, we can say, traced out that how this agrarian factor played its role in bringing, we can say, political consciousness in the people of the Jammu and Kashmir during the 1846 to 1947. That is, it is, we can say, I am talking about the pre-partition Jammu and Kashmir. And we see that in this connection, I have studied so many studies which have been carried out on this theme, and the studies, with one way or other way, they have, we can say, a general overview of the theme. But what I have, we can say, tried here, that I have tried to look into this prism. No doubt we can say that E.H. Carr says that we cannot have generalizations, that we cannot generalize one thing, that it is particularly driven by some particular thing. Though that is not the case. I have taken other factors into consideration as well, but every factor is derivated by some material base. So my point here is there that I am not saying that the economic factor is the sole factor which played its role in bringing this mass awakening in Kashmir during the princely rule. But to my point is that as every base, at every, we can say, foundation has some material source behind it, and I have tried to trace that material source in my PhD thesis. But in this connection, I have, because I am the local of the area, I am the, we can say, I have witnessed so many things myself. I am not so much old, but my predecessors, my grandparents, they have narrated the stories. I have taken into consideration the oral sources. I have taken into consideration some non-conventional sources like the poetry, because we have so famous poets of the time, for example, like Abdul Azad, who has narrated the, we can say, who has narrated the condition of the peasantry of Kashmir in one of his famous poem that is called the Grease Nama. Grease Nama, it is a Kashmiri word, and we can say we can translate it into English, the story of the peasant. So I will briefly read out that how this research paper examines the origins of the national consciousness in Jammu and Kashmir during the Dogra period, arguing that political identity was primarily forged through agrarian economic struggle. We see that what played its role, because as I told you that when Maharaja became the ruler of the state, he declared the property rights null and void, and we see this previously it is said that 1/6 was the total produce which the state was taking, but now we see the state was...
Hello, just you need to summarize because we don't have much time. Huh?
Okay, sir, no problem. Because I was...
Your points of observation.
Yes, sir. So we can say that the central thesis as economics as crucible, it is, I'm of the opinion that the birth of the national consciousness in Kashmir was not primarily a religious or high political event. Because why I have used the word religious? Because it is a somewhat, we can say, a homogeneous population. A population belonging to only one religion. Dominant population, they are the Muslims, and only, we can say, 5 or 7% they are the non-Muslims. That is why I have used the word religion, that it was not a religious-driven, we can say, consciousness. It was a consciousness which was driven by the denial of the economic rights to the large section of the population. So, initially, it was forged within the structural vehemence of the agrarian economy. Because I have studied we can say, the biography and autobiography of Maharaja Gulab Singh. One of the, we can say, biographer of the Gulab Singh, he is from the Columbia University, Baba Satinder Singh. He has written a book called Jammu Fox. It is where he has argued that he proved a vampire in the sense that वो वाला एनिमल जो आपका खून चूस रहा है कि ये नहीं देख रहा है कि ये जिंदा रहेगा भी या नहीं रहेगा. So the systematic pauperization of the peasant created a common substrat of the grievances that transcended religious and regional differences. Now we see that because of the, we can say, the this over taxation system, because of the, we can say, the forced labor that was called the unpaid labor, we see that it crossed the, we can say, the regional differences, it crossed the religious differences, because the economic factor is a factor which touches every soul with equal intensity. Whether I'm a Muslim, whether I'm a Hindu, whether I'm a Sikh, whether I'm a Christian, everyone has to wear the clothes, everyone has to take the shelter somewhere. So we can say the mechanics of operation, for example, we see the revenue split, we see the over-taxation system, we see the forced labor, they played their role, and the state monopolies, they played the role, and I have a list of the, we can say, the taxes which were taken out by the state, and they are huge in number, we cannot count here it, and for example, then we see the same pain, it was grieved through the, we can say, the poetry of the tribe, because the poets, they are the products of their age, they represented their age, they represented the social circumstances, and we see one of the, we can say, the leading poet of the time, it was this Abdullah Azad. He was, we can say, he has taken birth during this period and has seen this, we can say, the period, and has narrated the story of the peasants like this.
Sir, please wrap up, huh? Please.
I from a distinct place.
We have time
I want, because these people are not, most of the people, because this is a generation, the content basic generation who have huge content, but we are not usually studying. This is a part where maybe someone may get interest to explore that area more better than we people have explored. That is why I am trying to narrate something here, because they may come to know that what was the situation during this period in this area of the globe. And he has narrated the story of the peasant that age of slavery has shackled me like a snake, despised and fear. But I will not narrate it, but I am just giving a clue that how the poet of the times, how he has narrated the story of the peasants who was one of the major working class of the times. So then we see that resistance and shift to political subjectivity, because it gave birth to such type of, we can say, consciousness. Then we see that this ultimately the struggle for economic dignity served as a foundation catalyst for Kashmir's awakening during the period. It was a pronounced state. The subjects of an unregulated economic system who lacked education, nutrition and social mobility eventually transformed their sheer misery into vigorous battle for self-identification. And this vigorous battle for self-identification, we can say the thought was due to this vigorous battle for self-identity, first by Muslim conference, then the national conference headed by one of the towering leaders of the state, that is called the Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah.
Thank you so much. It was a beautiful presentation. Right. So before I ask for certain questions, yes, I have one question. Right?
Yes, sir.
You were talking about a political awakening.
Yes,
right. How do you connect this political awakening to the concept of the Renaissance? You are getting my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because you are talking about Renaissance, it is a 15th, 16th centuries phenomena. Yes, that is called Renaissance. We see that no doubt every we can say factor is connected somewhere. We cannot say that it took place in isolation, because the people who are spearheading this, they have come from Aligarh and from different universities of the country. Like because it is a pre-partition period, they have come from Aligarh, they have come from Lahore, and that was a time when we see in the country, Khilafat movement was going on, when we see the non-cooperation movement was going on, and the leaders who were, we can say, who were the torch bearers of these movements, they have read about the French Revolution, they have read about the Renaissance period as well, and definitely if you are talking about such type of such type of freedom, then definitely you might have gone through the philosophy of enlightenment. Without the philosophy of enlightenment, you cannot talk about such things that I should get freedom. So I think we cannot isolate Renaissance from this. We can say that it doesn't have any impact. It has its impact on such type of ideas when they flourish.
Another observation, I'm not asking the
necessary questions. You can ask a question, sir. No problem for that.
But I have the observation that is already you have talked regarding the economic dignity and other things, and even the bonded tenancy. And I hope you touched on the human rights aspect also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because
so it is clear that after 78 years of independence, what I feel that is still the violation continues. And you are also thinking of that. Still violation continues.
Yes, sir. This is a different phenomenon. Talking about this violation is a different phenomenon. But talking about this violation, it is a different phenomenon. This is we are talking about a time and space. When country was united, when there was no Pakistan, when there was no Bangladesh.
Sure. There is a time frame. You have mentioned a time frame.
Yes.
But now my observation is I hope that recently the problem is different. I hope.
Yes, sir. It is totally different, sir. It is totally because we see after 1947, the case was taken to UNO, and then some situations took place, and so many events happened.
Sure.
And today, to my conclusion, most of the things they have went wrong after 1947. That is why we are in this situation.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Is there any question? Anybody?
So now I would request Jyotirmoy Bishwas and Sagar Rakshit to present their paper. And just before you start, I'm just reminding you that you have 5 minutes for presentation, 6 minutes for presentation, and 2 minutes for question answers session. We don't have time due to time constraints, right?
Hello. Very good afternoon to all the respected dignitaries, respected chairperson, my students, scholars, and colleagues as well. This is a combined paper with me, and we have my co-author Jyotirmoy Bishwas, and our paper is titled as War as a System, a Study of Power, Discipline and Death in All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a film that came in the year of 2022, and it has been adopted from a German writer, Erich Maria Remarque's novel, All Quiet on the Western Front. So I'll be reading out the paper, and I'll be showing few short clips from the film, and I'll try to wrap up as soon as possible. Okay, so most people deal with any psychological problems that arise from a traumatic event in a variety of ways. In order to successfully process the traumatic recollection, trauma victims must recognize the meaning of their suffering, otherwise it becomes despair. Now, as we are dealing with the movies, so the movies have the potential to influence how we think about these socio-cultural issues, but those same socio-cultural issues also inform the content of the movies. In many film representation of the returning of veteran has been shown as very violent, unpredictable and dehumanized, and war trauma erodes their capacity to imagine the life beyond the battlefield. They believe even if the war ends, the traumatic memories of war will never leave them until death. The history of cinema is full of countless examples in the genre of war film. And in some of these films, the destructive social phenomena war is revealed, or in another case, in other way, the war propaganda is also shown. Now, I would like to show a very short clip from this film. Of the soldier, the uniforms are taken out and it is reused for the new soldiers, for the newcomers. Remarque's novel, All Quiet on the Western Front, the film, stands out as a work describing the Western Front of the First World War, especially for the young soldiers who fought on the Western Front and who were referred to as a lost generation. And in this film of 2022, a film that came with the same name, directed by the Edward Berger, gives a visual reading of war and trauma as well, and as a systematic apparatus that exposes human life to death. In the film, the director, Edward, is trying to portray the way war that brings destruction to humanity and the psychological devastation of the soldier. Paul Burmer, here the protagonist in this film, and his friends Muller, Kropp, Lear, at the age of 19, they are enrolling themselves in the World War I, and they are very joyous, very happy that they are going to be in the battlefield. They are brainwashed with the idealistic notions of patriotisms, heroisms as well, and the glory. And they romanticize the war in a start by imagining it is an adventurous trip where they would play the role of courageous hero. Here I like to quote that from the novel, that the first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it, the world as they had taught it us to broke into pieces. Next please.
Wesenheit zum Anlass nehmen, alle Feindseligkeiten auszusetzen. Im Namen der Menschlichkeit bitte ich Sie für die Dauer der
I'm taking out the character from this film and I'm trying to make an analysis that Joseph, his line in the non-man land gets before any more can rescue him. He gets shot by the enemy in the eye. Paul Burmer and his friends faces the brutal realities of war such as violence, constant fear and death, which leaves deep emotional scars on their mind. They become emotionally numbed and alienated and feel difficulty into returning to their normal lives even when they are away from the battlefield. On the other hand, from the another scene of the film, we get to see that their company, their troop, leaves for the front with 150 soldiers and they're returning with only 80 soldiers. And all of them are killed by the English army. And Paul's friend, Cambridge, gets injured while fighting on the front and his leg is amputated by the doctor. Paul recalls, in this particular scene, Paul is trying to recall, rather he recalls the memories of their past before the war, and he starts crying along with Cambridge. Cambridge's distant stare at the world indicates the psychological trauma he is experiencing due to the war. And here I want to quote Brewen in his theory of dual representation, that when traumatic memories are triggered, the individual re-experiences the emotional intensity of the original trauma. That is why Cambridge cries, because he compares his old memories.
This is Rakshit, please wrap up, please.
Yeah, with the traumatic memories of war. Okay. I'd like to conclude, as we don't have much time, and I'll conclude with a short clip from the film. Okay, it's my request. Okay, because in the last we'll get to see that how Paul Burma is killed. Okay, so here I start my conclusion with a quote from the novel. Youth. We are none of us more than 20 years old, but young. Youth, that is long age, we are old folk. So this movie allocates a great deal of space to the diplomatic side of the war, although the situation reflects the brutality of war on the other hand. It refers that war is an undesirable situation and that diplomacy is not the one that starts the war, but the side that struggles to end it. And war trauma erodes their capacity to imagine life beyond the battlefield. They believe if the war ends, the traumatic memories of war will never leave them until death. Here, Muller, a friend of him, questions that Muller questions his comrades that what they would do after the war ends. But nobody has the answer. So they eventually abandon the conversation and agree to decide after the war ends. And I'll conclude by a short quotation, then finish. I'm very quiet. Let the months and years come. They can take nothing from me. They can take nothing more. I am so alone and so without hope that I can confront them without fear. The life that has borne me through these years is still in my hands and my eyes. Whether I have subdued it, I know not. But so long as it there, it will seek its own way out, heedless of the will that is within me. It's a quote by Remarque, and it's a dialogue by Paul Burma. It's a last scene. Last scene. If you have any queries, he will answer.
It was a brilliant audio-visual presentation, I should say. Right. So, just my observation, since you are also a student of literature, so this presentation reminds us of what Bernard Shaw said in Arms and the Man. That we civilians, we have the habit of romanticizing war, glorifying war. But Bernard Shaw said, as you know, that soldiering should be the profession of life, not the mission of life, right? But we have the habit, as I said, of romanticizing war, glorifying war. War means, a soldier should lay down his life for some ideas like nationalism, patriotism, and other things, But, a soldier is also a human being. As a human being, he has every right to survive in the world, you know. So how do you connect this with this philosophy of, you know, Bernard Shaw's anti-romantic philosophy?
Sure, may I take the question? Yes. What we try to do here is that we try to draw this particular notion that in actual world, the division between battlefield and the human world, where there is no battle going on, is actually, you know, erased. In this world, there is no soldier who is presented as a hero, right? All the soldiers, they are human soldiers. They suffer, they are hungry, they had to steal goose from a Frenchman's farmhouse, right? And when in the very last scene, you know, no, it's towards the last segment of the film, there is a repetition of a scene where we find that, you know, what is the name of the friend? I mean, the friend, I think it's Kate or something like that. The two of them, the protagonist Paul and his bosom friend, who, you know, befriend only in the trains, they were trying to steal a duck from a farmhouse of Frenchman, and then Kate eventually got killed. And not only this scene, there are too many narrative and as well as, you know, stylistics presentation of war, where we find a dichotomy of life and war. Like one example, this particular notion of stealing goose from one's farmhouse is, what is this? This is basically life and the force of life, right? And on the other hand, war is going on. Also, this dichotomy is
okay. Thank you so much. Is there any question from the audience? Okay, thank you. Very nice presentation. Next, I would request Dr. Shuman Shikdar to present his paper. Dr. Shuman, we don't have time. Just summarize your paper.
Actually, I have lots of slides, but for this time constraint, I'm just showing the 3 or 4 slides. And within these slides, I want to explain all these things. Because understanding a better understanding of this work is very important in this test. So, myself, Dr. Assistant Professor of Principal-Siliguri College of Commerce. Yes, on my mic. You. Because time is very close. So, here, in this paper, actually, all the on the dais. Actually, this topic I have chosen for how to minimize the conflict between the statesmen or the states, actually. Because if you go to find out the border conflict around the world, then this diagram, if you look into this diagram, so this is very important diagram globally because it's the border conflict matter. And if you look into this yellow portion, that is the highest border conflict area. Yes, listen. For live streaming. Yes. And if you look into the America, there is also the border conflicts are there. Europe, very less. And Middle East, this is the Middle East, is very less, but after the 2000, this is the data and the graph has been taken from the 1989 to 2023. And between over this period of this study, it has been seen that Europe and the Middle East comparatively less boundary conflict it has been observed. But if you look into the Asia, that is this portion Asia, before the 2011 it was almost less. But after that, continuously it is being running. Okay. So, because this graphical presentation is very important in this respect, and that's why if you look into this diagram, that means the 2011, and after that the 2010, then dramatically the scenario of globally has been changes. And very important thing is respect that European Union, that means it's a great deal and the great negotiations of the all countries in this Europe. So that's why border conflict, if you look into this diagram, before 1993, lots of border conflict has been observed, but after the 1993, the formation of the European Union, the border conflict, you can say the no visible diagram and the space has been founded in this diagram. So very important things there. In this respect, the strategical theory and the strategical process, whether it is politically, whether it is international relation related, and also the nowadays behavioral economics takes a very important role. That means it is a point of view on the basis of the moral ground, whatever. So here in this paper, we have tried to find out how game theory, a different method of the game theory, how gives us to idea to minimize the conflict. In this respect, I have chosen the water conflict, river water conflict between the India and Bangladesh, which is very important after the partition of the Bangladesh, after the partition of India and after forming Bangladesh after 1971. So there is a lots of key game theory I have applied there: the prisoner's dilemma, chicken game, repeated game, and a hawk dove game. And if I come into this figure, that means it is between the India Bangladesh. You can see visibly it is very clear that here there is a three rivers, very important three rivers: Brahmaputra, Tista and Ganga. But the conflict has been arise in the Tista river water, where Bangladesh needs the help of to continuous flow of the Tista river, so that they can hold this water in this Dahlia project, which has been situated into the Rangpur. It is very important in this respect. That means water agreement is the core important point factor of this conflict. So that's why lots of framework of the game theory. Game theory's framework wise, we have arranged the strategical and the policy decision and the outcomes, possible outcomes we have formed in this game. So after that, I have find out this outcomes of the game is very important for understanding if we want to minimize the conflict between these two countries. And as well as I have also shown Peru-Ecuador conflicts and also the Sino-Indian border, that means China-Indian border conflict, how to minimize this conflict by the use of the political strategy or under this game theoretical method. Now I have to come into the first Excel and the first box. There is a Bangladesh and Indian conflict. How can we minimize this conflict by the application of this strategy? Just look into this here. That means 40% share of Tista water. If India apply the decision to share the 40% water, 60% water, natural flow. These are the strategy of India. And these are the Bangladesh strategy, 50% use of Tista water. Dahlia project, that is the main issues for the Bangladesh. And for this conflict, in Bangladesh wants the water from of Tista river, because of the Dahlia project, they want to hold this water and to use this agricultural works and do nothing. That means no issues they have Bangladesh. There are the three strategies. So out of these three strategies, it is very important you can see that India's intention always try to hold the 60% water. That means 60% water. There are the payoff metrics, possible outcomes are there. Bangladesh also wants to.
Hello.
Also wants to.
You are requested, please wind up.
Definitely. And Bangladesh always wants to maintain the Dahlia projects. So 60% water store and the Dahlia projects gives gives us the very understandable negotiation relationship between the two countries, but not possible in this respect because it has been found that India always try to hold the 60% water, and Bangladesh does not have any other strategy without doing nothing. That is 1 minus 3. That's why Bangladesh, it is very difficult situation nowadays. One of the reason is the river water conflicts. So dear presenter, dear audience, that the same thing is Equator and Peru escalations management is also responsible in this respect. Payoff metrics of Sino-Indian borders are also there, like Galian Valleys conflicts. It's nothing but it is the Chinese hawk behavior. It is a Chinese hawk behavior. It is a Galwan Valley's reactions of China. And India's dove attitude against China is always continue. And that's why the Indian dove reaction and Chinese hawk reaction, sometimes we are facing the -5 and 5, and sometimes we are also giving our own aggressive repercussion like Doklam. In that case, the India and China, this outcomes we are getting, that's -10, both countries. So as an economist and a moral ground, definitely we have another options at 0-0, but it is unfortunately not possible. That kind of cultural societies in conference gives us the idea to add some more behavioral factors in this model that the country and the nations can understand to choose the optimum solution so that the peace can be continued and sustainable in the long run. So this is very important theoretical perspective here. The next time, if I get the opportunity, definitely I will show, as the time is constant, how behavioral economic theory gives us the idea to find out more good optimum strategy to sustain the peace globally. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, audience, for listening. If you have any questions, then very passionate presentation. Yes. Thank you very much. If you have any questions regarding this global conflict of this border, I am ready to give you the answer.
Subban Babu.
Yes, sir.
Now, already you have explained a very good thing, that is the Tista River, that is the conflict, how it can be minimized between the Bangladesh and India. But there is also another aspect is there, but regarding this Tista River water, there is a natural flow already you have mentioned, and 60%, 40%, whatever may be. But I hope that there is some the legal perspective is also there.
Yes.
How it can be resolved.
Yes.
So without having any legal concept or legal boundaries, we have that there is an agreement part.
Yes.
And it's a commerce college. I hope there is an agreement is also the part. And in particular agreement or whatever may be the agreement, there is a two parties there. And whether there is the agreement part, and we have to emphasize on the agreement, and obviously you have mentioned rightly there is the economic behavior and the behavioral approach of the economy. Very good presentation. That was only my observation. I hope it should be.
No, definitely, sir, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, I would request Dr. Shaili of Mathabanga College to deliver her lecture, her presentation.
Good afternoon, all dignitaries and all the esteemed audience present here and to the respected chairs. I am Dr. Shaili Roy. I am an assistant professor of English at Mathabanga College. So the topic of my presentation today is Everyday Wars, Badal Sarkar, Migrant Bodies and Moral Responsibility. So the basic premise of my paper would be economic deprivation as everyday war. I would start my presentation with a very famous and powerful quote by Badal Sarkar. He said, "I am not interested in entertaining the audience, but I am rather interested in disturbing the audience." So why this disturbance? War, war, when we talk of war, we very conveniently think of arms, we think of guns, we think of ammunition, but in reality there are several wars that are running even as we sit through this conference, within ourselves as well as outside. In the context of this paper, I am specifically talking about the endless wars that migrant workers face, and for them displacement more often than not is not a choice, rather it is a compulsion, right? This sort of violence, it works slowly, it works quietly, and it is a form of violence which in theoretical terms we call structural violence. So this structural violence and large-scale internal migration is an issue which Badal Sarkar through his plays, he has repeatedly echoed in most of his plays, and his famous concept of the third theatre. It is here that theatre of Badal Sarkar becomes deeply relevant. Sarkar consistently turns our attention to those who were pushed to the margins of the society, the rural poor, the migrant laborers, and people whose suffering is normalized and therefore it is ignored. So art as a form should not ignore this category of displaced workers as well. As I said, it is not a choice, but rather it is a movement they make for survival. Sarkar's third theatre practice, it strengthens this ethical engagement. It rejects elaborate stages, lighting, the typical proscenium stage, and it makes the human body the center of performance. Connecting it to the stripped down form, it connects it to the fragile existence of the migrant laborers who most of the times live a life of exposure and uncertainty. And from a human rights perspective, therefore, these plays expose the violations that often remain invisible. The right to livelihood, the right to dignity, and the right to a peaceful human existence. So while global discourse mostly focuses on war on the global scale, the geopolitical wars, Sarkar long back has tried to draw our attention to the wars that run internally within a nation, internally in our human lives, and this demands equal attention, right? And this was proven very much, if all of you should remember, during the COVID time, this image of migrant laborers walking back homes, this haunting image, I think most of us have not forgotten. Right? To conclude, Badal Sarkar's plays draw us to read labor migrants as a form of displacement produced by everyday violence rather than large-scale globalized violence. So moral interrogation of the society is the purpose of these plays. I have less time, otherwise I would have shown some case studies. So just I would end by one line, that is, it is our responsibility, as Sarkar says, to acknowledge our ethical responsibility towards those lives whose lives are shaped by invisible wars.
Thank you so much. So it was a brilliant presentation. Just I have two queries. One is how do you connect this with Brecht's theory, epic theatre, theory of epic theatre 1? Number one. Number two, Badal Sarkar, do you think that he was revolting against aestheticism? Because aestheticism talks about art for art's sake. You know that, right? That, and we were talking about that one dramatist should not only entertain the audience, but disturbing, or rather I should say that educating the audience as well, right? He was in favor of thinking audience. So your take on that?
Sir, the second question, I would like to take that first. Sir, like you said, to disturb the audience, in Badal Sarkar's plays, you cannot just go out, move away with a spectacle. you have to think. You move out with that thought in your mind. And disturbance means not to physically disturb, but then whenever you are moved, your thought is moved, only then this can come into action. So which is always against that art for art's sake. It is art for society's sake. So that is how I would like to see it. And for for epic theatre, if we take the famous play Mother Courage and Her Children, it shows us the crude form of war, how survival. In certain cases, I remember war as a business. That was the motto of that particular play. So Mother Courage takes belts from dead soldiers and she sells. Just like the audiovisual presentation was showing, war as business for survival, selling the geese. So this is showing you another aspect of war, not the typical glorified version that we have seen. So epic theatre was a sort of, we can connect it very much to show you the gruesome aspect of...
There's a sort of alienation effect.
Alienation, exactly, that is the word.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
That was the session which was started by A.B. Sheikh, Dr. A.B. Sheikh, and there were four presenters, no? Four presenters, and very nicely they have presented their paper, and we have enlightened from their paper. I hope the participants enjoy it. And now, with the consent and with the participation, lunch.
Okay, the organizers will. Thank you, respected chairpersons, to chair the session. Now we will move forward for the lunch session, and that will be provided in our administrative building, the main campus, Siliguri College of Commerce. And after that, we'll meet in the Ramkinkar Hall, which is downstairs. That will start from 3 p.m. So after the lunch session, 3:30. From 3 p.m. we'll start our post-lunch session. So all the participants, those who have their presentations in post-lunch session, they are requested to be there for their presentations. Thank you.